Today, me, Kassam, and the boss will be talking about the Negro League and how it changed the MLB as we know it today. So baseball has long been described as America's pastime. For decades, beneath its familiar surface lay the populace of America, and thus society of a chasm of America, and thus society. The Negro League arose out of circumstance, a sanctuary for black players denied access to play in the MLB. However, they ultimately laid the groundwork for resilience, achievement, and a healthy view of perspective too. Now, I will be talking about Jackie Robinson's letter to President Eisenhower. Jackie Robinson said, "Mr. President, I was shocked to hear that you told the Negro citizens of this land that we must wait and so on. This patience has worn thin. The time for equality is now." By 1958, Jackie Robinson was the person who broke the color-race barrier of the MLB. He was no longer just a baseball player, but he was a campaigner. His letter to President Eisenhower was an appeal for civil rights to be dealt with as expediently as possible. Robinson, he played for the Kansas City Monarchs of the Negro Leagues and also played in the Major Leagues, in which he also made history. Now we will be going over the Rube Foster as the progenitor of the Negro Leagues clubs in 1920 to 1921 as he announces the creation of the Negro League. In 1920, Rube Foster established the Negro League. It was much more than just a game. It was a sanctuary for extraordinary athletic talent saturated with legendary raw ability like Satchel Paige, Cool Papa Bell, Josh Gibson, who have pushed excellence to its limits of racial inequality. Robert Peterson's "Only the Ball Was White" is also an important text. It tells us about the wins and losses and overall experience of these athletes. Peterson has remarked the Negro Leagues was a bittersweet song of fulfillment strangled by the shadow of segregation. Now we'll be talking about the role of integration. Incorporation began with the signing of Robinson, but it represented the demise of the Negro Leagues, as well as observed by James A. Riley in Dictionary of the Negro League Baseball Leagues. Life all too did not end on a high note with a tinge of bittersweetness. Symbolic of progress, it was, however, it required foregoing the individual self and the black baseball community. Now, I will be handing off the mic to my teammate, Kassam, and he will talk more into detail about this.
This scene shows an English 101 course at the University of Pittsburgh in 2020, where students are discussing and remembering the 100th anniversary of the Negro League. This goes to show that the Negro League, although no longer in function or in order or working anymore, it's still being discussed, remembered, and celebrated till this day. The Negro League wasn't just about baseball and having fun. It was more about representation for the African American community during times of segregation, where African Americans couldn't do any of the things that white people could do, and they were really just limited to work, home, family, and that's pretty much it. This video is showing the Negro League Baseball Museum, and it really holds a lot of artifacts and meaning to anybody who holds any significance to themselves for the Negro League. It's not only about baseball, but more about the effect that the Negro League had on segregation, and further more into integration of schools, stores, restaurants, things like that. And they really honor the athletes and the people behind the scenes, because if they did not, then nobody would.
Now we are going to shift over and talk about the importance of the creation of the Negro League. This was a significant moment in American sports history. Many African Americans viewed it as a necessary step towards providing talented black athletes with an opportunity to showcase their skills, which were otherwise denied due to racial segregation in the MLB. The Negro League not only offered a platform for these players, but also became a symbol of pride and resilience within the African American community. However, opinions varied. Some people saw it as a reinforcement of segregation, while others believed it was a crucial step towards integration. Overall, the Negro League played a vital role in the eventual breaking of the color barrier in the MLB, leading to a greater recognition and opportunities for black athletes in professional sports forever.
Wrap things up, overall integration further popularized the MLB and baseball as a sport. People like Jackie Robinson and Rube Foster set the stepping stones for full integration. Still, today the Negro League holds its significance as it reminds us of where this nation once was. A great example of this was the Negro League Museum in Kansas City, or is the Negro League Museum in Kansas City, where African American culture has spread like wildfire. Every corner, every street, every block, every neighborhood. The Negro League also opened the door for recreational activity, as it is now allowed for African Americans to do more things, such as watching games and doing other things that they otherwise would not have been allowed to do. People such as Jackie Robinson and Larry Doby will forever be discussed in the topic of baseball, as they left their footprint and their marks in the soil. Going back to the actual Negro League, it was viewed by African Americans as the highest level of baseball for people like themselves to watch. Surprisingly, at the time, white fans also showed up to games and showed their support for the African American players, as the African American players were just as good as the white ones. This was a really big key factor that led to integration, as white men ruled the country and were in charge of everything that happened in the government. And without approval from them, integration would have never been possible or happened, because nobody would have supported it within the government. To discuss a few more African American players who also participated in MLB after being in the Negro League, Larry Doby, Bill White, and Curt Flood were a few African Americans to follow in Robinson's steps. Larry Doby, for example, had a monumental career as being one of the first African Americans to hit a World Series home run ever in history. Additionally, Bill White, another one of the first African American MLB players, even went all the way to give back to the sport after he retired to become an MLB broadcaster. But how does this relate to rights and responsibilities? A large way that the Negro League related to rights and responsibilities was by giving participating African Americans a break from the real world. In the Negro League, the only thing African Americans had to worry about was competing, trying their hardest, and trying to win their games. Further expanding on how this connects to rights, sports and other recreational activities were not considered at all for African Americans, as they were considered second-class citizens and only really had the responsibilities of work, home, and then home back to work. As the Negro League grew, so did the idea of African Americans playing baseball and other sports as well, with prime examples like Jackie Robinson being the first African American to join the MLB. It's not so hard to see why integration came so soon after, as Robinson did not disappoint on his debut. Many African Americans were soon to follow in his tracks.
I just wanted to re-elaborate how important the incorporation of the Negro League was to the MLB. Firstly, it was a huge step towards racial equality and just bettering society as a whole. This was a very, 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 very big step back then, because with segregation and all that civil rights movement stuff, I felt that this was just amazing to incorporate the Negro League into the MLB. Secondly, it brought a whole different talent to the game. I feel like the African American men that got the chance to play in MLB made it better. Like, with the bunt and run, the MLB players weren't doing that. They're accustomed to the old fashioned, and then the African Americans brought a flair to the game that will excite the crowd, which this leads me into my last and final point. The incorporation of the Negro League helped the MLB not only racial equality and brought a whole new look to the game, but it also helped the ratings because the African American men brought flair, emotion, and just personality to the game. Not saying that they didn't have it before, but now with the incorporation of the Negro League, it was just a whole different ball game. Now I just want to thank you guys for listening to the documentary, and I just hope you guys enjoyed it as much as we enjoyed making it. Thank you guys.